Okay, so we just finished with this slide, but I just want to make one point. So the structure of this program is that when we created this hour property, and then when the form loads, we're going to set the hour of the form. Now, it doesn't really make sense for the form to have an hour. It doesn't seem to be of much use, but we do give the form an hour, and then we set it. But and this happens as soon as we load the form. But remember that in the set method of when this property is created, um, we we do this, which means that we're going to load the value into the what is this again? This is the track bar, and it has a value property. We're going to load that into the uh, value property of the track bar. But okay, that's okay. But then we're going to do two other things, uh, or maybe just one other thing, but it's broken down into two steps. We're going to create a status text, which is just a string, um, and it has the same uh, value. It refers to the same value that is set here, and that's just the input into the set function. Um, and also then that string is then put into, what's this? This is the text box. So the text box um, text gets this string. Okay, so all of this happens as soon as we load. So something appears in our um, form and in our, actually in the, what is this again? This is the text box. In the text box, as soon as we load the form. But that's not really what we want. I mean, okay, so we have something uh, in the um, in the text box as soon as we load the form, but that's not really the purpose of all of this. The real purpose of all of this is what? That when the user uses the slider, that they get a different value. Okay, so we want to basically do this again, but we want to do it. Uh, we want to do it whenever the user slides that sliding bar in the track bar, that little button that we slide along. So we want to reset it when as soon as they do some sliding. Okay, so where we want to do this again, where? Let's take a look. If you double click the track bar, you create what's called a scroll event handler. So in other words, if you double click here, we haven't done that before. If you double click here, then you automatically create this trk hour underscore scroll. So it's a scroll event handler. And that's where we want to have this actually happen. We had it happen uh, when the form was created, but that just gives us something like this when the form is created, which is kind of weird. It just says at 2200 or whatever the actual time happens to be. Albert is, but it won't have anything there. But now we want to set it so that uh, when the user scrolls, we get a new value deposited in that string, in this string here. So let's see what he says. Add code to the set the hour property by scrolling. Okay, so in other words, we double click your track bar to create a scroll event handler, and then add the aqua blue box code shown below. So put this, I'm sorry, just this part into the scroll handler. Okay, as with the call in form 1 underscore load, when me.hour is set, this also occurs. Okay, the current hour is passed to trk_hour.value, so that's here. He says that's unnecessary because it's already been set. and a status string is passed here, necessary to our text box to follow our slider. So when we move the slider somewhere, it picks up the value and sets it in the hour. And then that shows down here because of this statement here. Okay? And then he says this is where our enum finally comes in. But first let's test the basic function. So if you just test it now, you'll get this because all we have so far is Albert is. So we want Albert is something. And basically what we want to have here is depending on the value here, we want to get the string value of that. So we want to go back to here, and we want to get these things like asleep, getting ready for work, traveling to work, and so on. So we want one of those to happen depending on the value. So we have to do this. So we're going to look down here first. So what we're going to do is we had the status text before, right? That was in here, right? I'm sorry, here. We're going to modify this a little. Just going to add something at the end here. And what we're going to add at the end is this, and predict action value. Okay, and this predict action, we haven't written this yet. This is a function, you can see, because it has this. And we're allowed to put value in it because it's inside the set function, which takes value as an input, so we can refer to value just like we could refer to value here. We can also refer to value not just here, but also here. Okay, but this is a function that takes value as an input, but we haven't written this function yet. But it's going to, what it's supposed to do is, depending on what value is, if value is equal to 2, then what do we want? If value is equal to 2, it means, I think, that it's 2 in the morning, so we wanted to say something like he's sleeping. If value is equal to 12 o'clock, we want to say he's at lunch. So we want to create such a function that will generate that and then call it right here, and then the status text will have what we want it to have in it. So it'll look something like this finally. Okay? So we have to create this function. So how do we create it? So here it is. Predict action. Private, it's a function. Uses the by val, has a parameter, only one parameter, which is actually an integer. The name of the parameter is time, so we'll refer to it inside the function. We'll refer to time inside the function, and then we have to get some kind of output. So we're going to return action. That's the output. And what is action? So remember that select case is sort of like an if-then. So we have like if time is equal to 7, then set action equal to this. If time is equal to 8, then set action equal to this. So, but we do it instead of if-then, we use a select case. So select case time. So case if time is between 0 and 6, action equals this, or action equals this. If time is 7, then action equals this, and so on, all the way down to preparing for sleep here. Or, for example, 19 to 21, then action is relaxing with friends. Okay, so we have that, and here up above we create action as a day action type. In other words, remember day action is our enumeration. So then we can assign action day action dot asleep. So this is like kind of a property, in a sense, of day action. This is actually I should say, sorry, it's a value that day action can take. This is a value that day action can take. This is a value that day action can take. This is a value that day action can take. So we assign that value in case it's between 0 and 6, and in case that it's 7, this action variable or enumeration takes on this value, and so on. So we're giving a value to action. Okay? And then once we have a value for action, we assign that to me.currentState. Going back to this slide, remember that we had current state is also of day action type. So we created such a variable before. So since current state is also of type day action, we can assign it action because action is also the same type. So we can assign action to that. Now he says we're just going to keep that. Maybe we're going to do something with it later. But here's really what we want to do, and that is we want to return the action. So depending on the hour, we want to return the different actions. Okay? So now we put predict action, this function that we've just created, and we put in value. Remember, value is available because we're using this within the set function here. And so we're doing it in here somewhere. In fact, we're doing it right here. So we have access to this variable. This is a local variable for set. So we have access to it, so we can refer to it. And so we do that. Okay? And now we test it. And if you test it now, you test this code and do a little sliding here, you should get something like this. But this is kind of not exactly what we wanted, right? Because here it says at 1900, Albert is 6. Well, that's not really what we wanted, right? So we have to do one more thing, and that is we can convert. Okay, so remember, this returns an action, which is one of these things. And then if we call the toString property of this, which is kind of a weird thing to do, but because we have to do dot toString, but it's really, remember, this is really, it looks like you're calling toString on another function, but it's not really what's happening, because this function produces what? Outputs an action, or in other words, a day action, actually. So we're calling the toString property on this day action. That makes a little bit more sense, because it's like calling the toString property on this, and what that actually does is it converts, instead of you having a number here, an integer here, it converts it to whatever this value is: asleep, getting ready for work, traveling to work, and so on. So finally, we get something like this. Okay, so it's pretty complicated, but you should make sure that you understand it. So if you want to go back and listen to this video again, you can do that. But you should make sure that you understand how this works. Okay, conclusion. In this lecture, we learned how to build and use VB methods, which are little mini programs within our programs. So we did that way back in an earlier video in this lecture. We covered two types of methods: subroutines, methods that do not return a value; event handlers, defined by Visual Studio, are subroutines, or we can build our own subroutines; and then functions, methods that return a value. So like that last one that we just had, predict action was a function. So it returns a value. It returns here, return action, it returns a value, some kind of value. And then we finished our discussion of data types with enumerations. They're custom integer-based types defined by us, which allow us to place limits on our data types and give meaningful names to the values. And we created a simple project day action. I'm not so sure I'd call it simple. Day action, where we made a custom function, predict action, a custom enumeration, day action, and used a new WinForm control, the track bar. Okay, so that's the end of lecture 6.